Minister, thank you so much for joining us. And I know you had a busy day because you were in the United States this morning, and now here you are at the NATO headquarters. And you say at this point, the motto for me is stay calm and join NATO. When are you going to join NATO?
Well, we are now closing in towards the summit in Vilnius next week. It is my and the Swedish government's hope that we will now see a clear response from the Turkish side so that the ratification process can start in the Turkish parliament and Sweden can become NATO member.
And the NATO Secretary General today, he actually threw a lot of support for your candidates in your country. He said and basically listed in front of reporters everything that you've done, from changes to the constitution to the arms control. Today we had a decision from a court to expel an individual that is connected to the PKK. That is something that Erdogan feels very strongly about. Do you feel this memorandum, we really have done everything that we possibly could? This is now about the politics.
Well, it is my firm belief that we have done everything that we committed ourselves to in the memorandum, and so say also all other NATO allies as well. You're quite right. Yesterday I was in the White House and together with my Prime Minister meeting President Biden, and the support from the United States in favor of Swedish NATO membership is extremely tough, and I also can say from having been in contact with the NATO foreign ministers who are representing countries who have already ratified Sweden, that the support in favor of us joining NATO as soon as possible remains firm.
And in terms of the dates, because Mr. Stoltenberg also said it's clear that the ratification in the Turkish parliament cannot happen by Monday, and there will be a bilateral meeting between your Prime Minister and President Erdogan. The dates now, how is that going to work? When you say the best outcome come Tuesday would be this, what would it be? What is that it?
Well, presenting timetables is a bit complicated at this point in the process, but let's say the following: if there is a positive outcome of Vilnius, looking at what happened when Finland became NATO member in April this year, it took only a few days within both the Turkish and the Hungarian parliaments, since Turkey and Hungary are the only two countries who hasn't ratified Sweden yet, to do the ratification process. It's not so complicated. So I look forward to a swift ratification after Vilnius if there is a positive outcome.
And let's just say, obviously this is in the future, but let's just say we get to Vilnius and President Erdogan does say, I've looked at what the Swedish government has done, we've had a serious conversation, and yes, we are satisfied with what we see. They're an ally, we want them now in NATO, let's do the ratification. They ratify, the Hungarians allegedly will follow suit, although it's unclear why they haven't ratified yet. And then what would happen? Do you believe you can have your flag here by the end of the month if that happens at Vilnius?
Well, of course, that should be the goal, to have as swift ratification as possible. Following the ratification of Turkey and Hungary, the next step is for me to travel again to the United States to hand over our documents to be deposed at the US with the US State Department, and after that we will be NATO members and the flag hoisting can take place. This is how it works.
Which is waiting for you. But just very briefly, what happens though, and obviously I don't want to spoil the party in this case, but what if we get to the Vilnius summit and President Erdogan still says, I just don't see it, they need to do more? At that point, do you start to consider this is becoming a serious security risk now for our country?
First of all, it's already a serious security risk. We have retaliated over and over again, but we live in a world now following Russia's aggression on Ukraine that is very unstable, and that is shown not at least in the part of the world where we live, namely the northern part of Europe. Sweden joining the NATO is going to bring a lot more security to the table. Sweden not being present in NATO is going to do exactly the opposite. You can only look at Finland, who says very clearly that our membership in NATO is not complete without Sweden's accession, to understand exactly the consequences of this.
And just a final question. You've said there's no dissolution or disillusionment when it comes to the Swedish people. We will join. Maybe it takes a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but we're not dropping this. And then let's say the spirit for it is still there. It's still present. Is that what you feel from the Swedish people, that this is a top priority and they don't really care about the timeline? They just want to join?
Well, they do care about the timeline. Of course, it is important to become member as soon as possible, but we do see that the polls are quite clear. From the beginning of this year until now, we have had an increase with 4%. We now stand at 67% approval ratio for Sweden joining NATO. And of course, given the fact that we are doing the greatest changes for 200 years with our security policy, moving from being a non-military aligned state to becoming military aligned with NATO, I think we can live with a few days.
Well, thank you so much, sir. Appreciate it.